Remember that time a movie came out of nowhere and convinced an entire generation that crying in a theater wasn't just acceptable? It was the whole point of going? That was Terms of Endearment. Paramount released it in December 1983, written and directed by James L. Brooks, a television man who had never made a feature film, adapted from Larry McMurtry's novel about 30 years in the life of a mother and her daughter. Shirley MacLaine as Aurora Greenway, imperious, hilarious, and more terrifying than any villain Hollywood produced that year. Debra Winger as Emma, the kind of performance that made every other actress in Hollywood quietly reconsider what they were doing. Jack Nicholson as the womanizing astronaut next door, a character Brooks invented wholesale, who doesn't exist in the book, and who somehow became one of the most beloved supporting roles in Oscar history. It beat Return of the Jedi at the box office, 6 different weekends, #1. And the story of how it got made is somehow even more extraordinary than the movie itself. Today, we're counting down 15 weird facts about Terms of Endearment that you probably never knew. And stick around for #1, because the truth about Debra Winger and how close this performance came to never existing will completely change how you watch this film. Hit that like and subscribe. It helps us reach every person who still feels this movie somewhere in their chest. All right, let's get into it. 15, the movie that spent 4 years being nobody's idea of a good time. James L. Brooks didn't walk into this film. He fought for it. For 4 years, he carried Larry McMurtry's novel around Hollywood, trying to convince someone, anyone, to finance a character drama with no action, no obvious plot, and no commercial hook. Studios weren't interested. A story about a mother and daughter arguing across 30 years of life wasn't exactly what anyone was greenlit in the early 80s. The only way Brooks could get the money was to attach a star, so he invented one. He wrote the character of Garrett Breedlove, the womanizing astronaut next door.
Do you need some help?
Be fine just as soon as I stretch my legs.
Specifically to get Bert Reynolds on board, because with Reynolds he could get the film made. That was the plan. Then he needed his Aurora. He'd been searching for a woman in her 50s who could carry the role, and nothing was landing. Eventually, a legendary Hollywood agent named Sue Mengers suggested Shirley MacLaine. They met at a beach. Brooks hired her on the spot. His reason was simple. She was the only actress he'd talked to who understood Aurora as a comedy role. Everyone else saw a weepy drama. MacLaine saw a woman who was genuinely funny. Brooks later said she was the only one who ever saw it as a comedy.
You know, there's something about your manner. It's like you're trying to toy with me.
That's right, Aurora.
That single insight shaped the entire film, and it nearly didn't happen. The role MacLaine turned down to be here? Poltergeist. 14, the astronaut that nobody wanted to play. Here's the thing about Garrett Breedlove. He doesn't exist in McMurtry's novel. Brooks invented him from scratch after spending time in Houston researching the city. He interviewed former NASA astronauts, got fascinated by the culture around Johnson Space Center, and built the character around that world. Then he watched virtually every man in Hollywood turn the role down. Bert Reynolds was the entire plan. Brooks wrote the part with him in mind. Then Reynolds' publicist called. Bert wasn't going to do it, but he wanted Brooks to know that he loved him. Reynolds went to do Stroker Ace instead. He later said, "There are no awards in Hollywood for being an idiot." Harrison Ford passed. At the height of Indiana Jones, he wasn't looking to play a paunchy, balding has-been. Paul Newman passed. James Garner passed. Then the script found its way to Jack Nicholson, not through an agent, not through a studio, through Debra Winger, who sent it to him herself.
I was curious if you still wanted to take me to lunch.
I wasn't aware that I don't know what to...
No, a few years back, you invited me to lunch.
A few years
That's
back...
right, and I wondered if the invitation still exists.
Nicholson read it over a weekend and cried. He told Rolling Stone, "I've always wanted to play older. Everyone was starting to make a total cliche out of midlife crisis. They were dissatisfied, they hated their jobs. I just wanted to say, wait a minute, I happen to be this age, and I'm not in any midlife crisis." He did have one concern. He told Roger Ebert, "I have a lot of vanity," specifically about his stomach. He hadn't exactly been living like a monk, and the role required him to be seen in swimming trunks. He did it anyway. And then on set, he became something else entirely. MacLaine later described filming the front door lunch scene. Every single take, Nicholson did something completely different. Bathrobe, nothing on at all. Drunk, with a woman behind him. The bathrobe made the final cut. MacLaine said, "You could never tell what he was going to bring out in you. That was the brilliance of working with Jack." The beach scene, where Nicholson puts his hand down MacLaine's dress, that was not in the script. He just did it. A wave splashed the camera lens at the exact same moment. Both are in the film. MacLaine confirmed it publicly years later.
See, I think that it turns your profession into a sex trap.
Oh, come on. Everybody uses whatever they have. I earned it. It's 106 astronauts in the whole world, and I'm one of them.
Nicholson swept all 4 major critics' awards for Best Supporting Actor that year. The role revived a career that, quietly, had been stalling. None of it happens without Bert Reynolds choosing a car movie over a character study. Number 13. Every actress in Hollywood said no to Emma. Finding Aurora was relatively smooth. Finding Emma was a casting disaster of historic proportions. Sissy Spacek was the first choice. She was attached to the role. Then she had a baby and had to drop out. Brooks went to marry Steenburgen next. They met. They didn't click. Jodie Foster was approached and turned it down. She was committed to finishing her degree at Yale. The role of a dying young mother was apparently less urgent than her education, which is fair enough. Then Paramount stepped in and suggested Debra Winger, who had just come off An Officer and a Gentleman. Here's the coincidence nobody talks about. Winger had also replaced Sissy Spacek on Urban Cowboy, 2 of the biggest films of her career, same exact substitution. Spacek drops out, Winger steps in, twice. Now, separately from all of this, Brooks, MacLaine, and Winger personally called Kim Basinger to beg her to play Patsy, Emma's best friend. 3 of them on the phone together. Basinger was offended at being asked to do a supporting role. She told them Bert Reynolds had asked her to co-star in The Man Who Loved Women, a Blake Edwards comedy. A much safer bet, she figured. That film bombed. The role of Patsy went to a woman named Lisa Hart Carroll, who had never appeared in a single production of any kind before in her life. It was her first credit. It remained one of her few. Number 12. John Lithgow stole an Oscar nomination in 3 days on borrowed time. Sam Burns, the gentle banker who begins an affair with Emma, was not originally John Lithgow. Another actor had already filmed 2 scenes in the role. Brooks watched the footage and decided it wasn't working. He needed someone else immediately. He called Lithgow. The problem? Lithgow was in the middle of rehearsals for Footloose. The director of Footloose, Herb Ross, said absolutely not. He couldn't spare him for a week. This is where it got interesting. Both Terms of Endearment and Footloose were Paramount productions. Barry Diller and Jeffrey Katzenberg ran the studio. They looked at the situation and overruled Ross. Lithgow was released. He came in and shot his entire role in 3 days. 3 days. The identity of the original actor he replaced has never been officially confirmed. The name George Dzunza has surfaced in conversations over the years, but no one has gone on record to verify it. What is confirmed is Lithgow's own account. He said, "I'd rather do this than Footloose." He received an Academy Award nomination for supporting actor, for 3 days of work, for a role that was never supposed to be his. Number 11. The war on set that nearly destroyed the best film of 1983. By most accounts, the production of Terms of Endearment was barely controlled chaos from the first day of rehearsals. Brooks later called the relationship between MacLaine and Winger as rocky as it gets. That may be the understatement of the decade. It started at their very first meeting. Brooks had them come to his apartment in New York to rehearse. MacLaine arrived in old Southern clothes, inhabiting Aurora from the moment she walked in the door. Winger arrived in combat boots and a miniskirt. Winger looked MacLaine up and down and said, "What's this shit you are wearing?" The tone was set. On the first actual day of shooting together, they were called to their marks. Winger got to hers first and told MacLaine where to stand. MacLaine, a 3-time Oscar nominee who had been making films since the 50s, said she heard her. Winger said, "Good, how's this for a mark?" Then, according to MacLaine's memoir, My Lucky Stars, and this is her account, which Winger has disputed, Winger lifted her skirt, looked over her shoulder, and farted in her face. MacLaine's response, "Do you always talk with your mouth full?" In a 2018 television interview, Winger was asked if any of it was true. She smiled and said, "There's something true in there." In 2021, she denied the specific fart story entirely, saying MacLaine had never told the truth about anything and may have confused their relationship with her own famously difficult relationship with her real daughter. We may never know exactly what happened. What's not in dispute is that it was a war. There was a physical shoving match. There were screaming rows. Winger was simultaneously fighting a serious cocaine addiction that she would only address after filming Wrapped. And then there was the moment MacLaine reached her absolute limit. She packed up, walked to her car, and tried to leave the production entirely. A Paramount staffer literally jumped on the hood of her car to stop her driving away. She came back. Brooks later recalled another moment. Winger locked herself in her hotel room and refused to come out. They were up against a shooting deadline that couldn't move. Brooks went up himself and knocked on the door. Winger said she couldn't see him. He said, "I have to use the bathroom." She said, "Nice try." He walked away. He says that somehow broke the ice, because suddenly nothing felt quite as serious as it had a moment before. Now here's what makes all of it stranger. Brooks encouraged it. He believed the tension between them was fueling something on camera that he couldn't manufacture any other way. He was right. The anger, the resentment, the love underneath all of it, it's all there in the film. MacLaine said years later, "We knew what we were doing. It was a very gritty way of working." The movie that nearly fell apart every other week became one of the most emotionally precise films ever made. Number 10. MacLaine watched the dailies through a closed door. After watching the footage pile up, Brooks made a decision. Winger was not allowed to see the dailies. He didn't want her second-guessing herself or adjusting her performance based on what she was seeing in the edit. He thought it would flatten something that was working precisely because it was raw and unguarded. MacLaine was also quietly frozen out. Brooks asked her not to come to screenings either. Her response was to come every single night and sit outside the screening room in the corridor, listening through the door. Brooks eventually found out, let her in, and would stand in front of her to physically block her view. Winger, meanwhile, would wander through the room with a bottle of brandy. The night MacLaine finally got a proper look at the footage, she picked up her purse, went straight back to her hotel room, called her agent, and told him they could stick the Oscar. She quit. She was talked down. She stayed. Brooks later told her exactly why he'd kept her from the rushes. He said, "Did you like what you saw?" She said yes. He said, "Good. That's why I wouldn't let you watch." Quick pause. If this movie made you call your mother the day you saw it, or if you've made someone watch it and then had to sit with them in silence afterward, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. We do this every week, and there are plenty more where this came from. All right, back to the countdown. Number 9. The governor of Nebraska swept her off his foot. While the production was shooting in Lincoln, Nebraska, using the University of Nebraska campus for the college scenes and Lincoln General Hospital for the final act, Debra Winger met the state's governor, Bob Carey. Carey was a decorated Vietnam veteran who had lost the lower part of one of his legs in combat. He had received the Medal of Honor. He was also, apparently, very good at meeting actresses on location shoots. The two started dating. Winger stayed at the governor's mansion. A local newspaper ran a literal voter poll, asking whether this was appropriate. 76% of respondents said it was fine. She was later stopped for speeding in a car leased in Carey's name. A local columnist wrote a piece asking for donations to buy Winger a used vehicle. People sent money. Even Canadians sent money. Winger matched the donations herself and bought a 1976 Chevy station wagon from a dealer called Weird Wally. She donated it to a home for troubled girls. When reporters asked Carey about the romance, he told them, "She swept me off my foot." He was alluding with considerable grace to the fact that he only had one. They dated for 2 years. Then it ended. Life went on. Number 8. The Simpsons was born at the wrap party for a tearjerker. At the end of production, as a gift to congratulate Brooks on completing his first feature film, production designer Polly Platt gave him a book of cartoons. The cartoonist was a young man named Matt Groening, and the strip was called Life in Hell. Platt had a particular one in mind, a 9-panel strip titled The Los Angeles Way of Death. The last 2 panels showed 2 different ways to die in LA, failure and success. They were drawn as the exact same image. Brooks was so taken with it that he tracked Groening down and asked him to come in to discuss creating animated shorts for the Tracy Ullman Show. Groening came to Brooks's office to pitch his Life in Hell characters. Then he stopped. He realized that animating Life in Hell would require him to hand over publication rights to the strip, his life's work. So, sitting in the lobby of Brooks' office, he invented something else on the spot, a dysfunctional family. The Simpsons debuted in 1989. It is still running. The most watched animated series in television history was sketched in a lobby because a production designer gave a director a cartoon at the end of a tearjerker about a mother and her dying daughter. That is a fact. Number 7. The roles Debra Winger walked away from, and the ones that walked away from her. After Terms of Endearment, Debra Winger was the most in-demand actress in Hollywood. What she did with that is one of the stranger career stories of the era. James L. Brooks wrote broadcast news specifically for her. She turned it down because she was pregnant. Holly Hunter stepped in at the last minute and received an Academy Award nomination. George Lucas wanted Winger for Raiders of the Lost Ark, the role that went to Karen Allen. She said no. She turned down Glenn Close's role in Fatal Attraction. She signed on to A League of Their Own, trained with the Chicago Cubs for 3 months, then quit when Penny Marshall cast Madonna. She collected her pay-or-play contract, which means they had to pay her whether she filmed or not, and said she thought Madonna's involvement had turned it into an Elvis film. Her opinion of Madonna's acting career, she told a reporter years later, has spoken for itself. Michael Douglas met her for dinner during this period to pitch her on Romancing the Stone. He came back to the studio in tears. He said he couldn't go to the jungle with her. He said, she bit me in the arm. The part went to Kathleen Turner. By the mid-90s, Winger was gone. She was 40 years old, she had 2 young children, she had a new marriage, and she looked at what Hollywood was offering her and decided it wasn't worth it. She left. Rosanna Arquette made a documentary about her disappearance in 2002. It was called Searching for Debra Winger. Number 6. The shot scene. 1 take. Nobody moved afterward. The most iconic scene in the film, MacLaine at the nurse's station, losing her mind because Emma's pain medication is 2 minutes late, was filmed at Lincoln General Hospital on a floor they had taken over entirely. Over 300 hospital employees and volunteers applied to appear in the film. The hospital was paid $40,000 for the use of the space. Give my daughter the shot. Do you understand me? Give her the shot. MacLaine did it once. That was the take. When she finished, no one on set said anything. The crew just stood there. There was nothing to say. The technical director of the hospital later recalled that the cast and crew were the most cooperative production he'd ever worked with. What he meant was, they showed up, they filmed something that will outlast all of them, and they knew it. What makes the scene work, and this is something MacLaine understood completely, is the 2 seconds after the nurse walks away. Aurora straightens up, smooths her jacket, becomes a lady again. The rage disappears as quickly as it came. That transition from total collapse back to composure is the whole character in 4 seconds.
She's in pain! My daughter is in pain! Give her the shot! You understand? You're going to behave! Give my daughter the shot!
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Number 5. Oscar night. The Whisper, the Speech, and the T-shirt. MacLaine had been nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress 5 times before Terms of Endearment. She had never won. This was her 6th nomination. She had been in Hollywood for 26 years. Both she and Winger were nominated for the same film, playing mother and daughter, competing against each other for the same award. The press coverage treated it as a fight. When MacLaine's name was called, she walked to the stage and stopped at Winger's seat. She leaned down and whispered something. Later accounts vary slightly on the exact words, but the substance is consistent. Half of this belongs to you. Winger's response, I'll take half. MacLaine's acceptance speech ran 3 minutes and 26 seconds. She thanked Brooks. She thanked Nicholson, calling their scenes together middle-aged joy. She addressed Winger directly, praising her turbulent brilliance, saying she had inhabited the character so completely that MacLaine thought for 4 months she had 2 daughters. Then she turned to leave. Then she turned back, and she said, I deserve this. The camera cut to Winger in the audience. She was laughing. 6 years later, Winger told the Los Angeles Times she was not entirely laughing. She said she was fine with brilliant. It was turbulent that landed wrong. It implied difficult. It implied the stories. The day after the ceremony, MacLaine sent her a T-shirt. It said, Turbulent means brilliant. Winger's assessment, if it needs an explanation, don't say it. After the ceremony, the cast gathered for photographs. Everyone posed with their Oscars. Brooks later recalled Winger sitting among them, holding her hands in exactly the right position, fingers curved just so, posing with an imaginary one. Number 4. The near collapse that almost unmade everything. Step back for a moment. This movie nearly didn't get made 4 separate times. Brooks spent 4 years being rejected before Eisner wrote the green light note. Reynolds bailed and took the financing plan with him. MacLaine tried to drive away, and a Paramount staffer jumped on the hood. Winger locked herself in a hotel room 2 weeks before a hard deadline, and underneath all of it, quietly, Brooks was directing his first movie. He had never done this before. He was learning how to run a feature film set in real time, managing union rules, shooting schedules, a cast of enormous personalities, and a script that required the audience to laugh and sob within the same scene, sometimes the same minute. Paramount executives were watching the rushes and trying to understand what they were looking at. What they were looking at, it turned out, was one of the best films of the decade. It just didn't look like one while it was being made. Number 3. MacLaine, 6 nominations, 26 years, and a speech she had been writing in her head since 1958. When Liza Minnelli opened the envelope on April 9th, 1984, at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, and read Shirley MacLaine's name, the woman who had been nominated for The Apartment, Irma Ladouce, Some Came Running, The Turning Point, and Being There, who had watched other people win for 26 years, got out of her seat and went to get what was hers. She had first been nominated in 1958. She was finally winning in 1984. The speech lasted 3 minutes and 26 seconds. No one played her off. She said she was going to cry because this show has been as long as my career. She thanked everyone she needed to thank. She turned to go. Then she came back for one more line. I deserve this. The audience laughed. They cheered. She was right, and they knew it. She had been right for a long time. James L. Brooks, in the room with 3 Oscars of his own from the same night, later said MacLaine was the one who made the whole film possible, not because she was the best Aurora he could have found, though she was, because she was the only one who saw it the right way from the beginning. While everyone else was preparing for a weepy drama, she was preparing for a comedy. She was right about that too. Number 2, what happened to Debra Winger after she posed with the imaginary Oscar? She went home. She had 3 Oscar nominations. She was the most wanted actress in Hollywood. And within 10 years, she had essentially disappeared. The cocaine addiction she had been managing during filming was addressed after production wrapped. The difficult reputation, the fart story, the biting, the hotel room, followed her everywhere, into every negotiation, onto every set she walked onto afterward. The roles she turned down and the roles that got away piled up. Broadcast News, Raiders, Fatal Attraction, A League of Their Own. She walked away from the industry in 1995. She was 40 years old. She said later, I had a new marriage. I wanted another child. It seemed ridiculous to run off for 3 months to do another film. She also said, I looked around and thought, it's time to go. She wasn't wrong. She just hadn't counted on what the industry would decide about her absence. Hollywood has a specific mechanism for dealing with women who leave at the height of their power. It closes around the space they left and fills it. And when they return, it treats them as a curiosity rather than a talent. When Winger came back, a documentary had already been made about the fact that she was gone. The industry that labeled her difficult had moved on. The performance she left behind in 1983, Emma Horton, dying in a Nebraska hospital, saying goodbye to her children, has not moved on. It's still there. It still does what it did in December 1983 to the people who see it for the first time. Number 1, the truck, the vow, and the performance that almost never existed. Debra Winger was 18 years old, working as a performer at a Christmas amusement park in California, when she fell from a truck and suffered a cerebral hemorrhage. She was told she would never see again. She was partially blind and partially paralyzed for 10 months. 10 months, lying still, being told that her vision was not coming back. At some point during those 10 months, she made a vow. If she recovered, if she could see again, if she could walk again, she would become an actress. That was the deal she made with whatever she was making deals with at 18. She recovered. She went to Los Angeles. She crashed an audition for Urban Cowboy, walked onto the Paramount lot by talking her way past a security guard, and got the lead role. She replaced Sissy Spacek. She replaced Sissy Spacek again on Terms of Endearment 3 years later. She received 3 Academy Award nominations before she was 30. She was the most in-demand actress in Hollywood. And then she played a woman dying of cancer. A woman saying goodbye to her children. A woman making peace with her mother in the end. A woman who ran out of time. Winger has said in interviews that she does not separate herself from her near death at 18, that the experience never faded, never softened. It doesn't get softer, she said. It doesn't fade. She was 27 years old when she filmed Terms of Endearment. She was simultaneously fighting an addiction, fighting with her co-star, and fighting a reputation that was already being used against her. And she was playing Emma, all at the same time. The woman who had been told she would never see again gave us the performance that made you see something in that theater you couldn't quite name and couldn't quite forget. She lost the Oscar to her co-star. She posed with an imaginary one. She left. And the thing she made, the real thing, Emma on that hospital bed, Emma with her sons, Emma at the very end, that's still sitting in your chest if you've seen it. It always will be. And there you have it. 15 weird facts about Terms of Endearment. Which one hit you the most? Drop it in the comments. And if this sent you straight back to that scene with the shot, or Emma's goodbye to her boys, share it with someone who needs to watch this film or needs to watch it again. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you next time. Come to laugh. Come to cry, come to care, come to terms. This is Remember That Time.